Joining me as he does every Friday on All Things US, Professor Simon Jackman, thanks for your time as ever. Let's start on the sort of plus side, I think. Military dialogue is open again. I mean, this is crucial. We've spoken about this before. Is this a real and concrete step? And this avoids that possibility, doesn't it, of miscalculation, or I guess the likelihood of it?
Yeah, about the worst thing you could imagine happening between the United States and China is an accident. And an accident taking place set against an environment where the militaries do not have good back channels to one another. US Air Force assets, US Navy air assets are coming up against the Chinese counterparts virtually every day of the week in the South China Sea. You need some rules of the road and some ways to talk down from the precipice should something untoward happen in that region. So that's you've got to welcome that. Anytime the two militaries, and particularly the on-the-ground professionals, can be in dialogue with one another, that's a good day out.
And that, hopefully, you know, that's the sort of thing that survives beyond a presidential election, which makes it all the more important depending on what happens next year. And then, Joe Biden was asked by the media at the end, is Xi Jinping a dictator, which you've called him before? Of course he is, but he opted to say that's the case. Is that going to undermine anything here, do you think?
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? Look, Tom, as I've said a few times here with you on our Friday chats, all foreign policy is domestic policy and domestic politics, rather, at the end of the day. And for the same reason, as Trudy pointed out, why the trade deal ran into such a strong opposition inside the United States. Once a president of the United States has asked that question on his home turf in the United States and closer to an election rather than further away from it, to dodge that question would be tricky, but to answer it, and you could see that B-roll there of Antony Blinken visibly wincing as Biden decided to bite on that. I don't think Biden had any other choice, Tom.
Yeah, I guess it's an international forum, but he's on domestic soil, which makes it a bit each way. What about our own domestic prism on this? Anthony Albanese, you know, apparently we're getting briefed out. He didn't want to go. Could he have refused the invitation, considering it came from Joe Biden? I mean, on the flip side, Joe Biden had a late cancellation at the Quad because he had a domestic issue. Would that have been a valid reason for our Prime Minister, do you think?
No, I think you've got to go. There's a long history. Australia helped create APEC. Hawke-Keating governments were instrumental in the creation of APEC. I think he has to show up. You want to talk up the Indo-Pacific as the strategic construct of our time. That's been an Australian creation in no small measure. I think you've got to follow through. Of course, you've got to go the multilateral. Now, the tempo's been insane, right? But I think he had to go, Tom, absolutely.
I'll call this last bit the 30-second segment because I've got two more questions and I've got 1 minute. The government shutdown avoided. It's temporary. What does it mean for the new speaker?
Look, he got out of jail on this one, Kevin McCarthy. As you have to do when you're a Republican, you've got to get important business done with Democratic votes. Usually that's a nail in your political coffin. Turns out it's not going to be this way for Mike Johnson. And I think that's just, I think Republicans realise enough is enough when it comes to eating our own, at least for the time being.
For the time being, the key. And what about the absence of Melania? Seeing a few articles on this in terms of the Donald Trump campaign. Does this hurt him? I mean, when we talk turnout for the female vote, which he doesn't have, you know, a big chunk of, but he needs as many as he can get.
No, I don't think it's particularly material. And I think actually a lot of women might even respect what she's doing and maintaining her privacy and that of their son, Barron. And perhaps more credit to her for navigating the very tricky waters of being that close to Donald Trump.
All right, there you go. You were on time. Pithy answers. I like it. Simon, thank you. We'll talk next week.